The sound of a MacBook Pro shattering against wet pavement is distinct. It's a sickening, expensive crunch that sounds like bone breaking. That was the sound of my life's work hitting the driveway. I stood in the doorway of the house I grew up in, the smell of my mother's Sunday pot roast still clinging to the air inside, clashing violently with the smell of ozone and rain sweeping in from the dark. My father, Frank Sterling, stood over me. His chest was heaving, his face a mottled map of red rage, veins bulging in his neck like thick cords. He looked like a man who had just defended his castle from an invader, not a father who had just destroyed the property of his 32-year-old daughter. "If you're going to sit at my table and tap away on that toy while we eat, you can get out," he roared, his voice cracking with the sheer force of his self-righteousness. Spittle flew from his lips, landing on my cheek. I didn't wipe it off. I didn't move. "It was a work emergency, Dad," I said. My voice was calm. Unnaturally calm. "I told you. The server migration for the client, work." He laughed, a harsh, barking sound that lacked any humor. He turned to my mother, Linda, who was shrinking into her chair at the dining table, her eyes fixed on her peas. "Did you hear that, Linda? She calls playing on the internet work. She calls typing into a screen labor. While I busted my back for 40 years at the plant, while I came home with grease under my fingernails, she thinks she's working." My sister, Chloe, sat across from Mom. She was scrolling on her phone, the irony was lost on Frank, of course, and didn't even look up. She took a sip of her wine, a smirk playing on her lips. She was the golden child. The nurse. The one with a real job involving blood and scrubs, even though she spent half her shifts complaining about patients, and the other half asking me for loans she never paid back. "It's not a toy, Dad," I said, stepping out onto the porch. The rain was coming down hard now, a cold Washington downpour that soaked through my blouse in seconds. I looked down at the driveway. The laptop was split open, the screen spiderwebbed, the internal components exposed to the water. That machine held the final code for the merger. It held the keys to a kingdom my father couldn't even comprehend. "It's trash," Frank yelled, following me out. He didn't care about the rain. His anger kept him warm. "You're 32, Mia. 32. No husband. No kids. No real career. You drive that beat-up Corolla, you wear those plain clothes. You're a failure. You're a useless failure who thinks she's too good to talk to her own family because she's busy coding." He got right in my face, his breath smelling of cheap beer and onions. "I'm done supporting your delusions," he hissed. "If you're so determined to chase this stupid dream, then pack your things. Get out. Go live in the streets like the losers you admire. Maybe then you'll learn the value of $1. I looked at him. Really looked at him. For years, I had flinched. For years, I had apologized. For years, I had tried to explain what Oratech was, what a SaaS company did, how I managed a team of 50 people across 3 time zones. I had tried to show him my bank statements, but he'd wave them away, calling them fake numbers on a screen. To Frank Sterling, if you couldn't hold it in your hands, it wasn't real. If you didn't sweat, you weren't working. But tonight, as the rain plastered my hair to my skull, something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It wasn't a scream. It was the quiet click of a lock turning. It was the sound of a bridge finally collapsing after carrying too much weight for too long. The hurt vanished. The desire for his approval evaporated, leaving behind a cold, hard clarity. I walked down the steps into the deluge. I crouched down and picked up the ruins of my laptop. Water dripped from the hard drive casing. I stood up and turned back to him. "You want me to go?" I asked. "I want you gone," he bellowed. "And don't come crawling back when you starve. Don't ask me for a dime." I looked past him, at my mother. She finally looked up, her eyes wide and watery. She shook her head slightly, a silent plea for me to apologize, to fix it, to keep the peace like I always did. No, I thought. Not this time, Mom. I looked at Chloe. She was watching now, entertained. She gave me a little wave, mouthing the word bye. I turned back to my father. A smile touched my lips. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a predator who realizes the cage door has been left open. Okay, I said softly. What? He blinked, thrown off by my lack of tears. I said okay, I repeated, my voice steady over the sound of the rain. If that's what you want. If you truly believe I'm a failure, then I'll go. But remember this moment, Frank. Remember that you chose this. You threw me out. Don't you threaten me, he shouted, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. It's not a threat, I said, walking toward my 2015 Corolla parked at the curb. It's a promise. I tossed the broken laptop into the passenger seat. I didn't have a suitcase. I didn't have my toothbrush. I had the clothes on my back and the keys in my hand. I started the engine. It sputtered, then caught. My father stood on the porch, hands on his hips, the king of his crumbling castle, watching his useless daughter retreat. As I pulled away, the rearview mirror framed him one last time, a small, angry man shrinking into the darkness. He thought he had just taught me a lesson. He thought he had cut off a dead limb. He had no idea he had just severed his own lifeline. I drove 2 blocks before I pulled over. My hands weren't shaking. My heart wasn't racing. I felt light. Lighter than I had felt in a decade. I reached for my phone. It was dry in my pocket. I dialed a number. Kevin, I said when my assistant answered on the first ring. Mia. It's 8 p.m. on a Sunday. Is everything okay? No, I said, watching the rain blur the streetlights. Plan B is in effect. Initiate the lockdown on my personal information. And Kevin. Get me a new laptop delivered to the penthouse. Tonight. The penthouse. Kevin paused. You're finally going there? Yes, I said. I'm going home. Before I tell you what I found waiting for me in the life I'd been hiding from them, I need to know something. Have you ever been the one holding the family together, only to be treated like the burden? Have you ever had to hide your success just to keep the people you love from feeling small? The drive from my parents' suffocating suburban neighborhood to downtown Seattle took 40 minutes. Usually, this drive felt like traveling between 2 planets. Tonight, it felt like time travel. I was leaving the scared little girl behind. I parked my rusted, dented Corolla in the underground garage of the Spire Tower. The valet, a young man named Thomas who knew me only as Ms. Sterling, rushed over. His eyes widened when he saw the car. Usually, I took Ubers here to maintain the separation of my lives, or I drove the company car, a modest Audi, that I kept hidden in a rented garage blocks away from my parents. But tonight, the worlds were colliding. Ms. Sterling, Thomas said, opening the door. He tried not to look at my soaked clothes or the wet, broken laptop in my hand. Shall I park this for you? Yes, Thomas. And have it detailed. Or better yet, call a scrap yard. I don't think I'll be needing it anymore. I handed him the keys, and walked toward the private elevator bank. The security camera scanned my face, and the glass doors slid open with a whisper. Floor 42. As the elevator ascended, my ears popped. I watched the numbers climb. 10, 20, 30. For 5 years, I had lived a double life. To my family, I was Mia, the struggling freelancer who fixed computers for neighbors and wasted time on useless apps. I lived in a small studio apartment near them, a decoy apartment I kept just for appearances, filled with IKEA furniture and instant noodles. To the rest of the world, I was Mia Sterling, founder and CEO of Aura Tech. My company specialized in back-end logistics software for hospitals and shipping conglomerates. It wasn't sexy. It wasn't TikTok. But it was essential. And it was lucrative. Ding. The doors opened directly into my living room. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the entire Seattle skyline, a glittering jeweled necklace of lights against the dark water of the Puget Sound. The apartment was vast, modern, and silent. White marble floors, Italian leather furniture, art on the walls that cost more than my father's entire house. I dropped the shattered laptop on the kitchen island, a slab of black granite. I stripped off my wet clothes right there in the living room, leaving them in a pile on the floor. I walked into the bathroom, turned on the shower, and stood under the steaming water for 20 minutes. I scrubbed my father's spittle off my cheek. I scrubbed the smell of pot roast out of my hair. I scrubbed away the guilt. When I stepped out, wrapped in a plush robe, I felt like a snake that had just shed a tight, constricting skin. I walked to the master bedroom. In the corner stood a heavy steel safe. I pressed my thumb against the scanner. Beep. Click. Inside were stacks of documents. Deeds. Stocks. Patents. The tangible proof of my useless dreams. But I wasn't looking for those. I reached into the back and pulled out a framed photograph. It was old, taken 10 years ago. It was me, Mom, Dad, and Chloe at my college graduation. Dad looked proud in that photo, but only because I had graduated with a degree he recognized, before I quit my corporate job to start my company. I looked at their faces. I thought about the salary I paid myself, a modest $200,000 on paper to keep taxes simple, while my equity grew into the millions. I thought about the loans I gave Chloe. I thought about the time Mom needed surgery, and I found a coupon that covered the $15,000 deductible. I looked at the photo and for the first time, I didn't feel nostalgia. I felt like I was looking at strangers. Parasites. I placed the photo face down in the bottom of the safe and slammed the heavy door shut. Clang. The sound echoed in the empty penthouse. It sounded like a gavel coming down. My phone buzzed on the counter. It was Sarah, my COO and best friend. I saw the alert from Kevin, Sarah said, her voice tight. He said you ordered a lockdown. What happened? Did Frank find out? No, I said, walking to the window and looking down at the city. From up here, the cars looked like ants. My father's rage felt small. Insignificant. He threw me out, Sarah. He broke my laptop and told me to go live on the streets. He did what? Sarah screeched. Does he know that laptop contains the encryption keys for the Vance Global deal? He doesn't care. He thinks I was playing solitaire. I'm coming over, Sarah said instantly. I'm bringing wine. And the backup server. Bring the lawyer too, I said. The line went silent for a second. Marcus. Yes. Marcus. Mia, Sarah said, her voice lowering. If you bring Marcus into this, it's not a family spat anymore. It's war. Are you sure? I pressed my hand against the cold glass of the window. I could see my reflection. I didn't look like the frantic, wet woman on the porch anymore. I looked like the CEO who had ruthlessly acquired 3 competitors in the last fiscal quarter. He told me to go live on the streets, I whispered, the anger finally crystallizing into something useful. Strategy. He wants me to learn the value of $1. Fine. I think it's time. I showed him exactly what my dollars have been buying for the last decade. Okay, Sarah said. I'll call Marcus. We'll be there in 20 minutes. I hung up. I went to the walk-in closet. I pushed aside the rack of decoy clothes, the flannel shirts and ill-fitting jeans I wore to visit my parents. I reached for the back, pulling out a silk blouse and tailored trousers. I dressed slowly, deliberately. I sat down at my desk, my real desk, made of mahogany, and opened the new laptop Kevin had already had a courier drop off at the concierge. I logged into my bank accounts. I saw the numbers. Checking, $412,000. Investment portfolio, $8.4 million. Aura Tech valuation, projected $17 million annual recurring revenue after the Vance deal. I wasn't homeless. I was one of the most powerful women in the city. And my father was about to find out that when you kick a giant, you'd better make sure they don't get back up. While I waited for Sarah and Marcus, I couldn't stop the memories from flooding in. Not the happy ones, those were too few to count, but the moments that proved just how blind my family really was. My mind drifted back 3 years ago. The winter of the Great Roof disaster. I remembered sitting in my parents' living room, the smell of mold and wet drywall choking the air. Water was dripping into a bucket near the TV. Frank was pacing, his face gray with worry. "It's $20,000, Linda," he had shouted, throwing his hands up. "We don't have $20,000. The bank won't give us another loan with my credit score." I sat on the sofa, clutching my purse. I had just closed my first major contract with a regional shipping firm. I had a bonus check for $50,000 sitting in my bag. "Dad," I had said gently. "I can help." He spun on me. "You? With what?" "Your computer money." "What did you make this month, Mia?" $500 fixing Mrs. Higgins' printer." "I have some savings," I lied. "I can lend it to you. No interest." "I don't take charity from my children," he sneered. "Especially not when you should be saving that money for a down payment on a real house, not that shoebox you rent." Later that night, I called the roofing company directly. I posed as the bank representative. I paid the bill in full. When the roofers showed up the next day, they told Frank there had been a clerical error in his insurance policy, and it was fully covered. He spent the next month bragging to the neighbors about how he had strong-armed the insurance company into paying. He never said thank you. He never knew. Then there was the gambling debt. My father liked poker. He liked it too much. 2 years ago, he got in deep with some bad people. $15,000 deep. He came home shaking, terrifying Mom. I fixed that too. An anonymous cashier's check. And Chloe. My phone pinged, snapping me back to the present. It was a text from Chloe. "Hey sis. Crazy night, huh? Dad is still raging. Look, I know it's a bad time, but I really need that $2,000 we talked about. My car needs new brakes and I'm scared to drive it. Venmo me." I stared at the screen. I opened my Venmo history. November 12th, $500, textbooks, she graduated 3 years ago. October 4th, $1,200, car repair again. September 15th, $800, rent help. I scrolled back years. Tens of thousands of dollars. Then, a memory hit me hard. Last Thanksgiving. I was in the kitchen helping Mom, and I overheard Chloe talking to Dad in the living room. "Look at this watch," Chloe was bragging, showing off a new Apple Watch. "Picked it up with some overtime pay. Being a nurse is hard, but at least I make my own money, unlike some people." She shot a glance toward my decoy apartment. Dad had beamed at her. "That's my girl. Hard work pays off." I had bought that watch. I gave her the money for her birthday because she said she wanted it to track her steps at the hospital. She took my money, bought the watch, and used it to shame me to our father. The realization made my stomach churn. It wasn't just Frank. It was the whole ecosystem. I was the host, and they were the parasites. They fed on me, grew fat on my sacrifices, and then mocked me for being anemic. My phone buzzed again. This time, a text from Frank. "Frank, I'm canceling your phone line tomorrow. And don't think you're staying on our car insurance policy. You want to live on your own terms. Pay your own bills. I burst out laughing. A cold, sharp laugh that echoed in the penthouse. He was threatening to cut off a phone plan that cost $40 a month. A plan that was actually under a family bundle I paid for, but let him keep the account login so he felt like the patriarch. He was threatening to kick me off the car insurance. I paid the premiums on his truck, Mom's sedan, and my own Corolla. You want me to pay my own bills? I whispered to the empty room. Dad, I've been paying your bills since 2018. The elevator chimed. Sarah walked in, carrying a heavy server case and a bottle of Pinot Noir. Behind her was Marcus, my attorney. Marcus was a man who smiled rarely and billed $800 an hour. Tonight, he looked grim. I got the call, Marcus said, setting his briefcase on the marble table. Sarah filled me in. He threw you out? Yes. And the property? Marcus asked. He thinks he owns it, I said, pouring 3 glasses of wine. He thinks he's the king of his castle. Marcus opened his briefcase. He pulled out a thick file. Well, Marcus said, adjusting his glasses. According to the foreclosure documents we purchased from Wells Fargo 2 years ago, through your shell company, Atlas Holdings, Frank Sterling hasn't owned that house since he defaulted in 2024. You do. I took a sip of wine. It tasted like blood and victory. Exactly, I said. But he doesn't know that yet. And we aren't going to tell him. Not yet. What's the play, Mia? Sarah asked, booting up the backup server. We have the Vance Global signing in 2 weeks. If this family drama leaks, if the press finds out the CEO of Aura Tech is homeless. The press won't find out I'm homeless, I said, sitting down at the head of the table. They're going to find out that Frank Sterling made the biggest mistake of his life. I looked at my phone. Frank's text was still on the screen. Pay your own bills. Marcus, I said. Draft a letter. But don't send it yet. Sarah, I need you to contact the utility companies. The power, the water, the internet, the cable. To switch the billing address. Sarah asked. No, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. Cancel them. All of them. Close the accounts. Sarah's eyes went wide. Mia, that's nuclear. They won't have heat. They won't have Wi-Fi. He told me to go live on the streets to learn what the real world feels like, I said, turning my gaze back to the city lights. I think it's time Frank learned what the real world costs. Let's see how long the king lasts when the castle goes dark. The next morning, I didn't wake up to the sound of my mother banging pots and pans or my father yelling at the television. I woke up to silence. High altitude, soundproofed silence. I rolled over in 800 thread count sheets. The sun was streaming in, bathing the penthouse in gold. For a second panic flared, the old reflex of I'm late, Dad's going to yell, I have to hide my laptop. Then I remembered. I wasn't hiding anymore. I walked into the kitchen. Kevin, my assistant, had already arrived. He was quietly setting up a mobile command center on the dining table. 3 monitors, a Cisco conference phone, and a pot of fresh coffee. Good morning, boss, Kevin said. The new laptop is synced. Your cloud backup restored everything from the incident last night. You didn't lose a single line of code. Thank you, Kevin. Also, he hesitated. Your mother called the office line 3 times. She used the emergency contact number you gave her years ago for your freelance work. Did you answer? No. I let it go to voicemail as instructed. I picked up the office phone and pressed play. Beep. Mia. It's Mom. Please pick up. Your father is, he's really mad, honey. He cancelled your phone line this morning. He says you need to come back and apologize on your knees, if you want us to turn it back on. Just come home, say you're sorry, and maybe he'll let you sleep in the basement until you find a job. Please. I deleted the message. Sleep in the basement. The basement where the boiler leaked. The basement where I had built the first prototype of Oratech while they slept upstairs, dreaming of winning the lottery. Kevin, I said, pouring coffee. Is the transfer complete for the utilities? Yes, ma'am. The cancellation orders went through at 9 a.m. Since the accounts were in your name, or rather paid by your accounts, it was instant. The power company said they'll do a remote shutoff by noon today. Internet is already down. Good. I sat down at the monitors. Let's get to work. We have a merger to close. For the next 8 hours, I was a machine. I wasn't Mia the daughter. I was Mia the architect. I finalized the integration protocols for Vance Global. I had a video conference with Mr. Vance himself. Mia, Mr. Vance said, his face filling the center screen. He was a silver-haired billionaire who had seen everything. You look different today. Sharper. Just focused, Robert, I replied. We're 2 weeks out from the signing. I want everything perfect. I like that. You know, that's why I chose Aura. Not the tech. The person. You have a hunger, Mia. A quiet hunger. If only he knew. At 12:30 p.m., while I was reviewing a spread of user interface designs, my personal cell phone, which I had reactivated on a new, private plan, buzzed. It was Chloe. CHLOE, WTF Mia. The Wi-Fi just cut out. I'm in the middle of streaming a show. Dad is freaking out. He says the TV isn't working either. I didn't reply. CHLOE, did you change the password? Stop being petty. Give me the login. I took a sip of my sparkling water. CHLOE, Mia. The power just went out. The whole house is dark. What did you do? I imagined the scene. Frank in his recliner, clicking the remote in confusion. The hum of the refrigerator dying. The silence descending on that house, not the peaceful silence of my penthouse, but the terrifying silence of destitution. I finally typed a reply. MIA, Dad told me to pay my own bills. So I removed myself from yours. The accounts were in my name. I closed them. 3 dots appeared instantly. She was typing furiously. Chloe, you paid the bills. Bullshit. Dad says he pays everything. MIA, ask him to show you a receipt. Any receipt. From the last 5 years. I put the phone face down. Focus. Strategy. At 4 p.m., Frank called. Not from the house phone, that was dead, but from his cell. I let it ring. He called again. And again. I finally answered on the 5th try, putting it on speaker so Kevin could witness. This is Mia. You ungrateful little witch. Frank screamed. The background was chaotic. I could hear Mom crying. Turn the lights back on. The food in the freezer is going to spoil. I have steaks in there. I'm sorry, who is this? I asked coolly. Don't play games with me. You hacked the power company. I'm going to call the police. You can't hack a power company, Frank, I said. I simply stopped paying for a service I no longer use. I don't live there anymore, remember? You threw me out. I pay the bills in this house, he lied, his voice wavering slightly. Then call the power company and set up an account in your name, I said. Oh, wait. You can't. Your credit score is 450 because of the poker debts. They'll require a $2,000 deposit. Do you have $2,000, Frank? Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. You knew, he whispered. I know everything, I said. I know about the poker. I know about the second mortgage you tried to take out but got rejected for. I know Chloe isn't working overtime, she's partying at the casino. You're lying, he sputtered, but the conviction was gone. I have a meeting to run, I said. Good luck with the steaks. I hear they cook well over an open fire. Maybe you can burn my old books for kindling. I hung up. My hand was trembling slightly. Not from fear but from adrenaline. It was the rush of finally fighting back. Kevin, I said. Get Marcus on the line. Phase 1 is complete. They are in the dark. Now, let's prepare Phase 2. What's Phase 2? Kevin asked. Phase 2, I said, looking at the calendar. Is the invitation. In 2 weeks, the Vance Global signing would be televised. It was going to be the biggest tech event in Seattle this year. I want to make sure my family knows about the event, I said. I don't want to invite them directly. That's too easy. I want them to find out. I want them to come to crash it. You want them to crash your signing? Kevin looked confused. Why? Because, I smiled, a shark baring its teeth. If I tell them I'm the CEO, they won't believe me. But if they break in to scream at me, and find me standing next to the governor and Robert Vance, the humiliation will be public. It will be permanent. It's a trap, Kevin realized. It's not a trap, I corrected. It's a stage. And they are going to be the stars of a tragedy they wrote themselves. 3 days passed. The silence from the house was deafening, but my spies told me everything. My spy was Mrs. Martha, the nosy neighbor across the street. I had fixed her iPad years ago, and we kept in touch on Facebook. Martha, Facebook Messenger. Dear Mia, is everything okay? I saw a generator truck at your dad's house. And your mom was crying at the mailbox today. She said you ran away and joined a cult. I snorted. A cult. That was Frank's narrative. He couldn't admit I was supporting them, so he invented a story where I was crazy/brainwashed to explain why the money stopped. I was in the war room of the penthouse with Marcus. The sleek conference table was covered in paper. This, Marcus said, patting a 3-inch thick black binder, is what I call the Pandora file. Once you open it, hope is the only thing left for them, and even that is slim. I opened the binder. It was a masterpiece of forensic accounting. Page 1, the electric bills. 5 years of receipts totaling $12,400. Page 5, the car insurance premiums. $18,000. Page 10, the roof repair. $20,000. Page 15, the medical deductible for mom. $15,000. Page 20, Chloe's loans, $42,000. Total financial support over the last 5 years, Marcus summarized. $107,400. And that's post-tax money, Mia. I ran my fingers over the numbers. I could have bought a Tesla. I could have traveled the world. You bought their survival, Marcus corrected. But here is the coup de grace. He flipped to the back section. A document stamped with the seal of King County. Assignment of deed of trust. 2 years ago, Marcus explained, Frank stopped paying the mortgage entirely. He bet the mortgage money on a sure-thing horse race. The bank initiated foreclosure proceedings. You stepped in through Atlas Holdings. I remember, I said softly. I told him I handled the paperwork with the bank to get him a forbearance. He believed it because he didn't want to admit he failed. Technically, Marcus pointed to the signature line. Atlas Holdings bought the debt. You are the bank, Mia. You own the mortgage. He hasn't paid a dime in 2 years. You have the right to foreclose on him tomorrow. No, I said. Not tomorrow. Why not? He threw you out into the rain. Because foreclosure is just paperwork, I said. It's bureaucratic. He'll spin it. He'll tell the neighbors the evil bank took his home. He'll play the victim. I closed the binder. I need him to admit it, I said. I need him to see me, really see me, as the person holding the keys. I want the realization to break him before the eviction does. You're playing a dangerous game, Mia, Marcus warned. Frank is volatile. I know. That's why we need security for the event. Speaking of the event, Marcus slid a tablet across the table. The marketing team just released the teaser campaign for the Vance merger. It's geo-targeted to Seattle. I looked at the screen. It was a digital poster. A silhouette of a woman standing against the skyline, looking powerful. The text read, Orattack plus Vance Global. The future arrives January 28th. CEO Mia Sterling leads the charge. My name. In bold letters. It's live. I asked. It went live 10 minutes ago on LinkedIn, Facebook, and local news sites. Aunt Carol, I said immediately. Who? My Aunt Carol. She spends 18 hours a day on Facebook. She follows every local news page to complain about the weather. She'll see it. As if on cue, my phone lit up. It wasn't a text. It was a notification from Facebook. Carol Sterling commented on a post you were tagged in. I clicked it. Under the glamorous announcement of my multi-million-dollar merger, and Carol had written, Is this a joke? My niece Mia fixes printers. Why is she using a fake name on a fake business page? This is fraud. Frank, look at this. I laughed. It was starting. Marcus, I stood up, grabbing the Pandora file. Pack this up. Bring it to the event. I have a feeling we're going to need to present evidence in the court of public opinion. You really think they'll come? Oh, they'll come, I said, walking to the window. The rain had started again, washing over Seattle. Frank's ego won't let him ignore this. He thinks I'm embarrassing the family by pretending to be a CEO. He'll come to drag me home to stop the charade. I touched the glass. Come and get me, Dad, I whispered. I'm right here. Somewhere across the city, in a dark house powered by a noisy generator, I knew Frank Sterling was staring at a phone screen, his face turning that familiar shade of purple. The bait was taken. The trap was set. I can only reconstruct what happened in the Sterling household over the next few days based on the angry voicemails and the gleeful reports from my spies, but the picture was clear. Frank didn't believe it. When Aunt Carol showed him the ad, Frank didn't gasp. He didn't wonder if he'd been wrong. He scoffed. Photoshop, he reportedly told my mother. Anyone can put their name on a picture on the internet. She's probably working as a receptionist there, and hacked the website to make herself look big. It's pathetic. She's trying to make me jealous because I kicked her out. That was the narrative. I wasn't successful, I was acting out. For the next week, they lived in a bizarre state of siege. The power was still out, Frank refused to pay the deposit, convinced he could suit the power company into submission. They were running extension cords from a neighbor's house, until the neighbor caught them and cut the cord. They were eating canned beans by candlelight, yet Frank's pride remained bulletproof. She'll come crawling back, he told Chloe. She'll run out of money for that motel she's staying in, and she'll come begging. And when she does, she's going to pay us back for all this distress. But I didn't crawl back. Instead, the city of Seattle was plastered with my face. Bus stops. Billboards. The cover of Seattle Business Magazine. It drove Frank insane. 3 days before the event, Chloe finally cracked. She called me. Mia, she hissed. Pick up. Hello, Chloe. Stop this, she said. Dad is losing his mind. He's driving around town tearing down posters with your name on them. He got a ticket for vandalism yesterday. That sounds like a personal problem, I said, signing a document Kevin placed in front of me. Where are you getting the money for this prank? Chloe demanded. Did you steal a credit card? Is that why you locked the safe? Mia, this is serious fraud. You could go to jail. I paused. They truly, deeply could not conceive that I was capable of greatness. Their worldview depended on me being small. If I was big, then they were small, and that was unacceptable. It's not a prank, Chloe, I said calmly. It's my career. Come to the event if you don't believe me. Horizon Hotel, Grand Ballroom. Tuesday at 10 a.m. We might just do that, she threatened. Dad wants to have a word with your boss about you impersonating a CEO. Please do, I said. I'd love for him to meet my boss. Oh wait, I don't have one. I hung up. The morning of the event arrived. I woke up at 5 a.m. I did yoga. I drank green juice. I felt a calm terror in my stomach. Today was the day. My stylist, a woman named Elena, arrived at 7 a.m. She put me in a navy blue Alexander McQueen power suit. Sharp shoulders. Tailored waist. I looked like a weapon sheathed in silk. No heavy makeup, I told her. I want to look like myself. Just stronger. When I looked in the mirror, I saw her. The woman I had been hiding. The narrative architect of my own life. You look terrifying, Sarah said, walking in with her tablet. In a good way. Like you're about to fire God. Just frank, I said. Are they here? Security reported a beat-up Ford F-150 circling the block, Sarah said, checking her messages. Frank, Linda, and Chloe. They're parking. Did you give security the instructions? Yes. Code Gray. Do not arrest them. Do not physically remove them unless they get violent. Deny them entry at the main gate, let them make a scene, then escalate it to me. Perfect. I rode the limo to the Horizon Hotel. The streets were lined with press vans. CNN. MSNBC. Local news. The Vance global merger was a multi-billion-dollar signal to the market. I stepped out of the car. The flashes of cameras blinded me for a second. Ms. Sterling. Ms. Sterling. Is it true Aura Tech is expanding to Europe? Mia. Look here. I smiled, waved, and walked up the red carpet. But my ears were pricked for a different sound. And then, I heard it. That's her. That's my daughter. Hey. Mia. I didn't turn. I kept walking. Frank was at the barricade, 50 feet away. He was wearing his stained work jacket and a baseball cap. Mom was in her housecoat. Chloe was wearing scrubs, looking like she came straight from a shift. They looked wildly out of place among the suits and couture. Let me through. Frank was yelling at a massive security guard. That's my kid. She's playing a trick. I'm her father. Sir, you are not on the list, the guard said, his voice a stone wall. I don't need a list. I'm Frank Sterling. I paused at the top of the stairs. Logan, my old college friend who was now a reporter for Channel 4, was standing right there. He had his camera crew with him. Logan, I whispered, leaning in. You might want to point your camera over there. The human interest angle of the story just arrived. Logan looked at the commotion, then back at me. He saw the cold resolve in my eyes. He nodded. Rolling, Logan said to his cameraman. The camera swung toward Frank. Frank saw the lens. He didn't shrink. He puffed up. This was his moment. He was going to expose the fraud. Tell her to get down here. Frank shouted into the camera. My daughter is a liar. She's mentally unstable. This whole thing is a scam. I walked into the ballroom. The doors closed behind me, muting his screams. Let him scream, I thought. Let him put it on the record. Inside, the room was a sea of gold and crystal. 500 guests. The elite of the tech world. Are you okay? Mr. Vance asked, approaching me. I'm fantastic, Robert, I said. My family just arrived to wish me luck. Really? Should we bring them in? Not yet, I said. Let them simmer. They need to be properly motivated before they see the truth. I checked my watch. 9:45 a.m. The live stream started in 15 minutes. Sarah, I spoke into my earpiece. Bring them to the observation room. It's time. The observation room at the Horizon Hotel was a unique architectural feature. It was a glass-walled box on the mezzanine level, designed for VIPs who wanted to watch events without mingling with the crowd. It was soundproof, air-conditioned, and had a direct view of the stage. It was also effectively a cage. Down at the main entrance, Sarah played her part perfectly. I watched on the security feed on my phone as I stood backstage. Mr. Sterling. Sarah approached Frank, who was currently trying to climb over a velvet rope. Who the hell are you? Frank snapped. I'm Mia's chief operating officer. She asked me to bring you in. Frank froze. He looked at Mom, then at Chloe. A smug grin spread across his face. See, he told them. She folded. She knows I'm making a scene and she's scared. She wants to cut a deal. He straightened his jacket. Lead the way. And tell her she better have a checkbook ready. Sarah led them not to the ballroom floor but up the side stairs. Why aren't we going in the front? Chloe asked, suspicious. VIP entrance, Sarah lied smoothly. Mia wants you to have the best view. They walked into the glass room. Sarah closed the door. Click. It locked from the outside. Inside, there was a large monitor on the wall broadcasting the live feed of the stage, and the glass wall offering a panoramic view of the 500 people below. Look at this, Frank muttered, looking down at the crowd. Hired actors. All of them. Costs a fortune. She's going to be in debt for the rest of her life for this stunt. Frank, Mom whispered, looking at the giant banner on stage. Aura Tech. That logo, isn't that on the back of the internet modem at home? It's a common shape, Linda. Don't be stupid. Backstage, the stage manager counted down. Mia, you're on in 5, 4, 3. I walked out. The applause was thunderous. It washed over me like a physical wave. I stood in the spotlight, looking out at the sea of faces. I saw Mr. Vance. I saw the governor. And I looked up. To the right. At the glass box. I could see them. Small. Confused. Frank was pressing his face against the glass. I took the microphone. Welcome, I said. My voice was amplified, booming through the hall, and I knew piped directly into the observation room. 10 years ago, I started writing code in a basement that smelled of mildew. I was told that what I was doing wasn't real work. I was told I was chasing fairy dust. I paused. I looked directly at the glass box. I was told to go live on the streets. A hush fell over the crowd. This wasn't the standard corporate speech. But today I continued, we aren't talking about the past. We are talking about the future. Today, or attack becomes the backbone of global logistics. The screen behind me lit up. Projected valuation, $450 million. CEO equity, 51%. I heard a gasp from the front row, but I was imagining the reaction upstairs. Frank Sterling was staring at that number. $450 million. It wasn't a fake screenshot. It was on CNN. It was on Bloomberg. He could see the reporters typing furiously. The reality was crashing down on him. The useless daughter, the failure, was standing on a mountain of gold that he had tried to shovel away. "I'd like to invite Mr. Robert Vance to the stage to sign the agreement," I said. Mr. Vance walked up, shook my hand, and we sat at the glass desk. The pen scratched across the paper. It was done. The room erupted. Confetti cannons fired. I stood up, holding the signed contract. I felt a vibration in my pocket. My phone. I checked it discreetly as the applause continued. A text from Sarah, who was standing outside the glass room upstairs. "Sarah, he's trying to break the door down. He's screaming that you stole his idea. He wants in." I smiled. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said into the mic, "thank you for coming. Please enjoy the reception. The press Q&A will begin in 10 minutes. I walked off stage. "Sarah," I said into the earpiece. "Let them out. Bring them to the green room. Let's finish this." I walked down the hallway toward the private green room. My heart was pounding, not with fear, but with the anticipation of the final blow. I entered the room. It was quiet. Just Marcus, the Pandora file, and two large security guards standing in the shadows. "Are you ready?" Marcus asked. "Never been more ready," I said. The door burst open. Frank Sterling didn't walk in. He stormed in. But something was different. The rage was there, yes, but underneath it was panic. The panic of a man who realizes he has been betting against the house, and the house just won. "You." Frank pointed a shaking finger at me. What is this?" "It's called success, Dad," I said, leaning against the table. "You might not recognize it. It doesn't have grease under its fingernails." $450 million, he choked out. That's not real money. You can't spend that." "I can spend enough of it," I said. "Why didn't you tell us?" Mom cried out, rushing forward. "Mia. We thought you were poor. We were worried about you." "Worried?" I laughed. "Mom, 3 days ago you watched Dad throw my laptop in the rain, and you didn't say a word. You weren't worried. You were relieved it wasn't you. We're family." Chloe chimed in, her eyes darting around the luxe room. "Mia, this is amazing. I knew you could do it. I told everyone at the hospital my sister was a genius." "You told everyone I was a loser who borrowed money from you," I corrected. I motioned to Marcus. "Sit down," I ordered. The command was so sharp, so authoritative, that they instinctively obeyed. They sat on the plush velvet sofa, looking like children called to the principal's office. "We need to talk about the living arrangements," I said. "Yes," Frank said, seizing on this. "We do. Now that you have this, obviously things change. I expect you to make things right. For the stress you caused us. Hiding this, it's cruel, Mia. We suffered." "You suffered?" I raised an eyebrow. "We sat in the dark for 3 days. And whose fault was that, Frank?" I asked. "But you're right. We need to settle the accounts." I nodded to Marcus. He stepped forward and dropped the Pandora file on the coffee table. Thud. The heavy binder landed with the weight of a tombstone. "What's this?" Frank asked. "Receipts," I said. "Open it." Frank stared at the black binder as if it were a bomb. In a way, it was. I don't need to read your little diary, Frank sneered, trying to regain his composure. He crossed his arms, leaning back. Here's how this is going to go. You're going to write us a check for, let's say, $5 million. For emotional damages. And for back rent. You lived in my house for years. Back rent, I repeated, amused. And Chloe added, I want a job. VP of something. HR. I'm good with people. And you apologize, Frank finished. To me. Publicly. Tell those cameras that your father inspired you. That I pushed you to greatness. I looked at Marcus. Marcus looked at me. A rare, thin smile touched the lawyer's lips. Mr. Sterling, Marcus said, his voice like gravel. I strongly suggest you open the binder before you make any more demands. Or what? Frank challenged. Or you might find yourself homeless by sunset, I said. The color drained from Frank's face. What did you say? Open. The binder. Frank reached out with a trembling hand and flipped the cover. Section 1, Utilities and Essentials. He flipped through the pages. Copies of checks. Bank transfer confirmations. The power bill. He muttered. The water. Paid by Mia Sterling, Marcus clarified. Every month. For 5 years. I thought the rates were just low, Frank stammered. The rates weren't low, Dad. You were paying $50 a month. The bill was $250. I paid the difference. Automatically. He flipped faster. Section 2, Crisis Management. He stopped at the copy of the check for the roofers. The insurance paid this, he said, looking up. I negotiated it. There was no insurance claim, Frank, I said. Your policy had lapsed because you missed 3 payments. I paid the roofers. $20,000. Cash. Mom gasped. Frank? You told me the insurance covered it. Shut up, Linda. Frank snapped, sweat beading on his forehead. He turned the page. The gambling debts. The $15,000 cashier's check to Big Tony. Frank slammed the binder shut. So what? He yelled, standing up. So you helped out. That's what children are supposed to do. You lived under my roof. It was the least you could do. Your roof? I asked softly. Yes. My house. My name is on the deed. Actually, Marcus said, pulling a single document from his briefcase, he hadn't even put it in the binder. He wanted to deliver this one by hand. That's the interesting part. Marcus slid the paper across the table. Notice of sale of debt borrower, Frank Sterling lender, Atlas Holdings LLC. What is Atlas Holdings? Frank asked, squinting at the paper. A holding company, I said. Wholly owned by me. I don't understand, Mom whispered. 2 years ago, I explained, stepping closer to them. The bank was going to foreclose on the house. Dad hadn't paid the mortgage in 6 months. He hid the letters from you, Mom. Mom turned to Frank, horror on her face. Frank? I was handling it. Frank yelled. I had a system. Your system was betting on ponies, I said. The bank was done. They were going to auction the house on the courthouse steps. So I bought the debt. I leaned down, my face inches from my father's. I bought your mortgage, Dad. I am the bank. You haven't been paying Wells Fargo. You've been not paying me. Frank collapsed back onto the sofa. He looked like he had been punched in the gut. The air went out of him. The arrogance, the bluster, the king of the castle persona, it all dissolved, leaving a scared, old man. You own the house, he whispered. I do. And do you know what landlords do with tenants who don't pay rent, destroy property, and abuse the owner? I pointed to the door. They evict them. You can't, Chloe shrieked. You can't kick us out. We're family. He kicked me out. I shouted back, losing my cool for the first time. The echo rang in the green room. 3 days ago. Into the rain. Did family matter then, Chloe? Did it matter when you stole money from me and lied about it? Chloe stammered. I have the Venmo receipts too, I said. Do you want to see those? Or should we skip to the part where you explain to Mom why her retirement fund is empty? Chloe shut her mouth instantly. The room fell silent. Frank looked at his hands. Mia, he croaked. Please. I'm your father. You made it very clear that I was no daughter of yours, I said. You told me to go live on the streets. You wanted me to learn how the world works. I stood up straight, smoothing my blazer. Well, Dad. This is how the world works. Money talks. And right now, mine is screaming. I turned to Marcus. Give them the terms. Marcus handed Frank a legal document. This is a lease agreement, Marcus stated. Lease? Frank looked up, confused. You're not kicking us out? Not yet, I said. I'm not you, Frank. I don't throw people onto the street for fun. But things are going to change. Drastically. Read the terms, I ordered. Frank squinted at the paper. Ownership of the property resides solely with Atlas Holdings, Mia Sterling. Tenants, Frank and Linda Sterling, acknowledge they are guests. Tenants will pay a monthly rent of $1. Tenants surrender all rights to control the property. Mia Sterling retains the right to evict with 24 hours notice if any act of disrespect, slander, or harassment occurs. $1. Mom asked, tears streaming down her face. It's a symbolic rental, I said. To remind you every month who puts the roof over your head. You will write that check. You will sign it. And you will mail it to my office. If you miss 1 month, the locks change. And I added, looking at Chloe. Chloe moves out. Today. What? Chloe jumped up. Where am I supposed to go? You have a job, I said. You make your own money, remember? Go get an apartment. Welcome to adulthood. But Mom. Chloe wailed. Mom looked at me, then at Frank, then at Chloe. For the first time in her life, she saw the reality. She saw the years of enabling. She saw the strength in me that she had never protected. She's right, Mom whispered. Linda. Frank gasped. She's right, Frank, Mom said, her voice shaking but firm. We failed her. We took everything and gave nothing. Frank looked at the document. He looked at the pen Marcus was holding out. He had a choice. Sign the paper and admit he was a tenant in his daughter's house, stripping away his last shred of pride. Or refuse, and be homeless by nightfall. His hand shook as he took the pen. He didn't look at me. He couldn't. He signed. Scritch. Scratch. The sound of his signature was the sound of the old hierarchy dying. One more thing, I said as he finished. What? He whispered, defeated. The laptop, I said. The one you broke. It cost $5,000. I expect the first 5,000 months of rent to cover it. Or you can mow the lawn. Your choice. I turned my back on them. Kevin, show them out. I have a press conference to give. Walking out of that green room felt like stepping out of a decompression chamber. Behind me, the heavy door clicked shut, sealing my family, my tenants, inside with their new reality. Ahead of me, the hallway stretched out, lined with eager staff, and the distant hum of a waiting press corps. I didn't stop to breathe. I didn't stop to cry. The time for tears had passed in the rain 3 nights ago. Now was the time for execution. Kevin fell into step beside me, handing me a fresh bottle of water and a tablet. The live stream numbers peaked at 1.2 million concurrent viewers, he whispered, his voice vibrating with professional excitement. Aura Tech stock is up 18% in after-hours trading. And Mia, there's something else. What? I asked, checking my makeup in a hallway mirror. I looked calm. Terrifyingly calm. Twitter is trending. Not just the merger. Him. Kevin tapped the screen. A clip from the pre-event chaos had gone viral. It was shot by a bystander, not Logan's crew. It showed Frank Sterling, red-faced and spitting, screaming at the security guard, "That's my daughter. She's a liar. She's mentally unstable." The caption read, "Boomer Dad tries to crash for $150 million CEO's big moment. Claims she's a fake. Gets denied entry. Hashtag Oratech hashtag toxic family." The comments were brutal. Imagine birthing a unicorn and calling it a donkey. I'd ban him too. The jealousy is radiating off him. Wait, isn't that Mia Sterling? She literally just saved the logistics industry, and he's calling her unstable. Let it burn, I said, handing the tablet back. I didn't light the match. He did. I walked onto the podium for the Q&A. The flashbulbs were blinding, a stark contrast to the darkness I had lived in for years. The questions started standard. Revenue projections. European expansion. The synergy with Vance Global. I answered them with the precision of a surgeon. Then, Logan raised his hand. We locked eyes. Logan knew. He had seen the wreckage of my laptop. He knew about the rainy nights I spent crashing on his couch in college because I didn't want to go home to Frank's criticism. Mia, Logan said, his voice projecting clearly. Your story is becoming a bit of a local legend. Small-town girl, self-made, no Ivy League connections. But today, there was a disturbance outside. Your father seemed quite animated. He claimed your success wasn't real. How do you respond to the people who doubted you, even the ones who share your last name? The room went silent. This was the question they all wanted to ask but were too polite to voice. I leaned into the microphone. Doubt, I began, my voice steady, is a currency. Some people try to pay you with it. They hand you doubt when you show them a business plan. They hand you doubt when you work late nights. They hand you doubt because it's cheaper than support. I paused, thinking of Frank signing that lease. Thinking of him realizing his castle was actually my property. For a long time, I tried to exchange their doubt for approval. I thought if I worked hard enough, the currency would change. But I realized something this week. You can't buy bread with doubt. You can't build an empire with it. So, to answer your question, I don't respond to the doubt anymore. I just look at the receipts. The crowd erupted. They didn't know the literal context of the receipts, but they felt the energy. It was a soundbite destined for TikTok. When I finally left the hotel, it was dark. My driver took me back to the Spire. I sat in the back of the Maybach, watching the city blur by. I pulled up the security feed of the house, my house. The feed showed the living room. The power was back on because I had reactivated the account under the new landlord terms. Frank was sitting in his recliner, but the TV was off. He was just staring at the wall. Mom was in the kitchen, slowly wiping down a counter that was already clean. Chloe was packing boxes in the hallway, throwing clothes into garbage bags with angry, jerky movements. They looked like ghosts haunting a house they no longer recognized. I should have felt guilty. That's what we are conditioned to feel, isn't it? Especially as women. We are taught that if our family is unhappy, it's somehow our failure to nurture them. But as I watched Frank get up and walk to the window, peering out as if expecting the police to arrive, I realized that guilt is just a control mechanism. He wasn't sad because he missed me. He was sad because he had lost his power. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from the bank. Deposit received, $1. Payer, Frank Sterling. Memo, rent. He had gone to the bank immediately after leaving the hotel. He was terrified. Good. I took a screenshot of the notification. I moved it to a new folder on my phone labeled Boundaries. I poured myself a glass of wine and stepped out onto the balcony of my penthouse. The air was crisp, smelling of rain and pine. Below me, the city was alive. Somewhere down there in a cramped apartment, Chloe was realizing she couldn't afford her Spotify premium subscription and rent in the same month. Somewhere down there, Frank was realizing he couldn't fix a broken ego with a wrench. I raised my glass to the skyline. To the streets, I whispered. Thank you for teaching me that I never belonged there. But the war wasn't over. I knew Frank. I knew that when a narcissist hits rock bottom, they don't just lie there. They try to dig. And I had to be ready for the dirt he was about to throw. 30 days. That's how long it takes to break a habit. Or a spirit. For 30 days, I didn't speak to them. I communicated only through Kevin, who acted as the property manager. Kevin, tenant reports a leaking faucet in the guest bath. Me, send the plumber. Bill it to the maintenance fund. Send them the receipt. Kevin, tenant requested permission to paint the front door red. Me, denied. The lease specifies neutral colors only. It was petty. Maybe. But it was necessary. I was retraining them. I was teaching them that boundaries are not suggestions, they are walls. On the first day of the new month, it was time for the scheduled inspection. The lease clause for point 2, landlord reserves the right to inspect the property monthly for the first 6 months. I didn't need to go. I could have sent Kevin. But I needed to see it. I needed to see if the dynamic had truly shifted, or if they were just biding their time. I drove the Audi this time. No more hiding in the Corolla. I pulled into the driveway. The lawn was manicured perfectly. Frank had been mowing it diagonally, the way he used to do when he was trying to impress the neighbors. I walked up the steps. The porch light was on, even though it was midday. A peace offering. Or fear. I knocked. Mom opened the door instantly. She was wearing an apron and was that makeup. She looked nervous, like she was greeting the queen, not her daughter. Mia, she chirped, her voice too high. Welcome. Come in, come in. We made coffee. I stepped inside. The house smelled of lemon pledge and fear. It was spotless. The clutter was gone. The pile of mail that usually sat on the entry table was vanished. Hello, Linda, I said. She flinched at the use of her first name. It was a distance I maintained deliberately. Frank came out of the living room. He wasn't wearing his stained work jacket. He was wearing a button-down shirt tucked into khakis. He looked older. Smaller. The fire in his eyes had been replaced by a wary, shifting gaze. Ms. Sterling, he muttered, unable to look me in the eye. Mr. Sterling, I replied. Is the property ready for inspection? Yes, he said. Everything is in order. I walked through the house. I checked the vents. I checked the windows. It was performance art. I didn't care about the vents. I cared about the compliance. We reached the hallway. I pointed to Chloe's old room. Is the unauthorized tenant gone? I asked. She moved out on the second, Mom said quickly. She's staying with a friend in Tacoma. She's looking for a second job. Good. I walked into Chloe's room. It was empty. The posters were gone. The smell of her cheap perfume was faint. "You know," Frank said from the doorway, his voice gruff. "You didn't have to be so hard on her. She's your sister." I turned slowly. "I wasn't hard on her, Frank. I was fair. Hard would have been suing her for the $42,000 she stole from me under false pretenses." "Did she tell you about that? About the nursing textbooks she bought that turned out to be a trip to Cabo?" Frank's mouth opened, then closed. He looked at the floor. I didn't know about the Cabo trip." "There is a lot you don't know," I said. "Because you never asked. You were too busy telling us who we were instead of asking us." I walked past him, heading for the kitchen. On the counter sat a single envelope. It was the rent check. I picked it up. It was filled out in Frank's jagged handwriting. "Pay to the order of Atlas Holdings. Amount, $1. I held it up. "Thank you," I said. "I'll issue a receipt." "Mia," Mom said, wringing her hands. "Can't we just stop this? Can't we be a family again? We can have Sunday dinner. I can make the pot roast you like." The smell of that pot roast, the smell of the night I was kicked out, triggered a phantom shiver. "I don't eat pot roast anymore, Linda," I said. "And we are family. We're just a family with clear contracts now. It's better this way. No confusion. No yelling. Just terms and conditions." "It's cold," Frank whispered. "It's cold, Mia." "It's peaceful," I corrected. I headed for the door. But before I left, I stopped at the mantel. The family photos were still there. But something was different. The photo of my graduation, the one where I was smiling awkwardly next to Frank, had been moved to the center. And next to it, clumsily framed in a cheap plastic frame, was a printout of the Seattle Business Magazine cover with my face on it. Frank had framed my success. Was it pride? Or was it a totem? Was he showing it off to neighbors to claim credit? "See, that's my landlord. That's my daughter. Take that down," I said quietly. "What?" Frank looked up. "The magazine cover. Take it down." "Why?" he asked, defensive. I'm proud of you." "No, you're not," I said, my voice cutting through the lemon scent. "You're proud that you survived me. You're proud that you're related to the winner. But you don't get to claim the victory, Frank. You bet against the horse. You don't get to hold the trophy." Frank stared at me. His face reddened, the old anger flickering, but he swallowed it down. He walked over, took the frame, and placed it face down on the table. "Inspection passed," I said. "I'll see you next month." I walked out to my car. My hands were shaking again, but not from fear. From the sheer, exhausting effort of holding up a mirror to people who refused to look at themselves. I sat in the driver's seat and breathed. I thought it was over. I thought I had neutralized them. But I forgot one thing. Frank Sterling was a gambler. And a gambler always tries one last bluff when he thinks no one is looking. 2 weeks after the inspection, I received a call from Marcus. "Mia," his voice was serious. "We have a situation. A legal one." "Did Frank sue me?" I asked, rubbing my temples. "On what grounds?" "Hurt feelings." "No. He didn't sue. He filed a claim against the estate of Betty Sterling. Your grandmother." I froze. Grandma Betty had died 4 years ago. She was the only person in that family who saw me. She used to sneak me $10 bills when Frank wasn't looking. She told me I had eyes that saw around corners. What claim? I asked. He claims he found a codicil to her will in the attic. He says she intended to leave the family jewelry, specifically the emerald ring you wear, to him to be passed to Chloe. He's claiming you stole it. I looked down at my right hand. The vintage emerald ring sat there. Grandma Betty had given it to me on her deathbed. She had pressed it into my palm and whispered, "Don't let him sell it, Mia. He'll sell it for scratch tickets. Keep it safe." There was no written will for the ring. Just her word and mine. He wants the ring. I asked. He wants to sell it, Marcus said. He's trying to raise capital. Probably to move out or, honestly, I think he just wants to take something from you that you care about. Set up a meeting, I said. At the house. Mia, I can handle this remotely. No. He's desecrating her memory. I'm ending this. I arrived at the house an hour later. Marcus was already there, standing on the porch with Frank. Frank looked smug. He felt he had found a loophole. A leverage point. It's family property, Frank was saying loudly as I walked up. It belongs to the estate. You took it without permission. I took it because she gave it to me, I said, stepping onto the porch. Prove it, Frank sneered. There's no paper. And by law, next of kin is me. Not you. He was right. Technically. Without a will specifying the ring, it went to the son. You want this ring? I twisted the emerald on my finger. You want to pawn Grandma's favorite ring, the one she wore for 50 years, so you can have some walking around money. It's about principle, Frank lied. It's about respect. I'm going to check the attic, I said, pushing past him. Hey. You can't just. Landlord's right to inspect, I shot back. You claimed you found a codicil in the attic. I want to see where. I climbed the dusty stairs to the attic. The air was stifling hot. It smelled of old paper and insulation. Frank and Marcus followed me. Over there, Frank pointed to an old trunk. I found a note. It said everything goes to my son. Show me the note, Marcus demanded. Frank pulled a crumpled piece of notebook paper from his pocket. It's in her handwriting. I glanced at it. It was a grocery list from 1999 that he had scribbled on the back of. It was pathetic. But my eyes were drawn to the trunk. It was Grandma Betty's hope chest. I walked over to it. I opened it. It was mostly empty, just some old quilts. But at the bottom, tucked under the lining, I saw a corner of a blue envelope. I pulled it out. It was sealed with wax. On the front in shaky, elegant cursive, to my Mia. What's that? Frank barked. Give that here. It's my house's contents. It's addressed to me, I said. I tore it open. Inside wasn't money. It wasn't a deed. It was a letter. Dated 2 days before she died. I read it aloud. My dearest Mia, if you are reading this, it means you finally found your voice. I know your father. I know he is a small man with a loud shadow. He breaks things because he doesn't know how to build them. I have watched you, Mia. You are the builder. You are the one who fixes the leaks he ignores. I have no money to leave you, Frank spent my savings years ago. But I leave you this truth, you do not owe him your light. You do not owe him your success. The ring is yours. Not because you are my granddaughter, but because you are the only one strong enough to carry the weight of this family without breaking. Fly, little bird. And don't look back. Love, Grandma Betty. Silence filled the attic. The dust motes danced in the shaft of sunlight. Frank's face went pale. He recognized the handwriting. He recognized the tone. It was his mother speaking from the grave, confirming exactly what he feared most. She knew. She always knew who the failure was. She didn't mean that, Frank stammered. She was sick. Her mind was going. Her mind was sharp as a tack, I said, refolding the letter. She knew you stole her savings, Frank. He flinched. She knew, I repeated. And she loved you anyway. But she didn't trust you. She trusted me. I looked at the ring on my finger. You want to take this to court, Frank? I asked. You want me to read this letter to a judge? You want me to enter the Pandora file into public record about how you drained her accounts? Frank slumped against a support beam. The fight drained out of him. The codicil in his hand dropped to the floor. Keep the damn ring, he whispered. I intend to, I said. And Frank, if you ever mention her name again to leverage money out of me, the rent goes up to market rate. $3,500 a month. Do you understand? He nodded. A jerky, broken nod. I walked down the stairs, clutching the letter against my chest. It felt warmer than the ring. It was the final validation. I hadn't just imagined it. I hadn't been crazy. I had been seen. I walked out of that house for what felt like the true final time. I wasn't just leaving my parents. I was leaving the need to save them. 1 year later, I stood on the roof of the Aura Tech headquarters. We had just cut the ribbon on the new wing, the Betty Sterling Innovation Center. It was an incubator for female founders from low-income backgrounds. The wind whipped my hair, but it wasn't the cold, biting rain of that night in the driveway. It was a warm, summer breeze. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from the bank. Deposit received, $1. Payer, Frank Sterling. He hadn't missed a month. We didn't talk much. I sent a generic Christmas card. They sent one back. Mom had started volunteering at a library, something I encouraged her to do through Kevin. She seemed lighter. Without the delusion of Frank's grandeur to uphold, they were living a simple, quiet life. They were tenants in reality, finally. Chloe had gotten a job at a clinic in Tacoma. She was paying her own rent. She blocked me on Facebook, but I heard she was actually doing well. She was angry, yes, but she was independent. That was the best gift I could have given her. I walked to the edge of the roof and looked out at Seattle. I thought about the girl who sat in that Corolla, soaking wet, with a broken laptop and a broken heart. I wanted to reach back through time and tell her, it's going to be okay. You are worth more than their approval. But then I realized, she didn't need me to tell her. She knew. That's why she left. Revenge isn't about destroying the people who hurt you. It's not about making them homeless or humiliating them on TV, although, let's be honest, that part felt justified. True revenge is refusing to become what they said you were. Frank said I was useless. I built an empire. Frank said I belonged on the streets. I bought the street. Frank said I was alone. I looked behind me. Sarah was there, holding 2 glasses of champagne. Marcus was chatting with Mr. Vance. My team, my real family, was laughing, celebrating, building. I wasn't alone. I was free. There is a moment in everyone's life where you have to choose between being a good child and being a whole person. It is the hardest choice you will ever make. It feels like tearing off a limb. But sometimes, you have to cut off the dead weight to save the body. I took the champagne from Sarah. To the future, she said. To the receipts, I smiled, tapping my glass against hers. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Please like this video, subscribe for more stories of justice and resilience, and check out the next video on the screen. See you there.